Welcome back to 2 p.m. with the Trigger, the special edition on Saturday. It's a rarity, but yes, we are live on a Saturday here today, continuing on our week-long feature as we focus on freedom from the fear of public speaking all month long. In the month of July, we're going to continue to talk about freedom from the fear of public speaking, but obviously this week we started this last Sunday, and we've had some amazing speakers step on in. We've talked about the fear of having to be perfect, the fear of being too vulnerable on stage, the fear of performance anxiety. And today we're going to be talking about another one of those fears as we wrap down the official week here. It's the freedom from lack of confidence. A lot of us are unsure. We turn on the camera, we turn on the microphone, we step on stage, and we're still not too sure if we're really ready to go with it. Roger Rickard is my guest here today. And again, he's got over 30 years of experience as a professional speaker, trainer, consultant, author. He's done it all. He's been around, and he also has a really cool bow tie. Welcome, Roger, today to 2 p.m. Live, and of course, freedom from the fear of public speaking. Roger?
Hey, it's great to be here this Saturday.
It's strange to do a live Saturday. Usually 2 p.m.s are only Monday through Friday, but because of this important topic, it's worth going the full week from Sunday to Saturday. So thanks for taking the time to be here today. You have been a speaker, an author. You've done this a long time. Did you ever have any of that lack of confidence fear in your life at all?
Well, of course, but I probably come at it from a little bit of a unique perspective. I'm going to be vulnerable here for a second and tell you that I couldn't read as a kid. Now, I could read the words, but I couldn't comprehend. And in sixth grade, I had an eye injury, and a substitute teacher noticed that I really couldn't read. And so we hired a tutor, taught me how to read. But the point of this, when it comes to speaking, is I then felt much more comfortable giving an oral report than doing a written report. And, I guess it's whichever fear was the most. And so the fear was greater when it was written versus oral.
Well, okay, so we're talking about the fear of public speaking, but then with that writing issue, you did eventually write a book. So these two things overlap big time with confidence for you, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. In fact, the first time I was asked to even write an article before I ever wrote the book, I was nervous as could be, wrote the article, sent it to the editor, and was just afraid it was going to get crucified in the edit process. And they came back and said, we made one change, we added a comma. Whew.
Wow.
Boy, did I feel better.
Wow.
So then, of course, because it was validated, my confidence level then went up when it came to writing. So
is that true with speakers too, who when they struggle with confidence and not sure if it's landing, if they're hitting, sometimes you can't, after most times I give a talk, I cannot remember the talk in the moment. And that gives me lack of confidence sometimes because I don't know what I really said. It just opened up the floodgates and it went out. Does that happen very often for you too?
Well, I'll tell you what happens to me is probably within 15 minutes before I go on, I start to get really nervous that I'm going to forget. Okay. And I have to tell myself constantly, every time you go through this, you end up walking on stage and remembering anyhow. And one trick of this is, of course, nobody knows what I was going to say anyhow. And so because of that, I don't worry about whether or not I skipped a little part of something, as long as I made sure that I hit all the major key points and told the stories the way I wanted to tell them.
So is that one of the tips for that lack of confidence, that just relax? People don't know what's coming next. So you can really do whatever you want, right?
Well, yeah. And I also think that you got to remember one thing. The audience wants you to succeed. Now, the reason they want you to succeed is for their own selfish reasons, their own self-interest, is they want to validate the time that they're spending there. So they're really on your side. It's not like you're in eighth grade and everybody wants to make fun of you. When you walk on stage, particularly as a paid speaker, but in any role of public speaking.
Yeah.
People want you to succeed.
I actually learned that late in my speaking career, but it clicked for me finally when I realized my name's on a marquee. It's on a banner someplace. They've promoted as being, I am the expert. They've invited me, and people have actually agreed to come. They're going to introduce me. So they've already set me up for success. And when I began to embrace the fact they've set me up for success, it's the same thing you're talking about. Lack of confidence went away. And now I get to roll with that. The expectation was this is going to be good because we came.
Well, in my intro, when I provide an intro for my speaking, I have them ask the audience a couple questions.
Ooh.
And by asking the audience a couple questions, then I say in the intro, if you answered yes to any of these questions, you are in the right place. Today's speaker will, boom, and goes right into it. So not only does that give the audience confidence that they're at the right place, that they're hearing the right message, but hello, it gives me the confidence knowing that they're saying yes before I ever say a word.
When I coach people on writing that introduction, I tell people, make sure someone else reads it. Tell them to read it word for word. It is made to be a confidence booster before you step on stage. I tell people when they read it, hopefully with passion and energy and the crowd erupts, that's setting me up to go bang on stage. Do you agree that is a confidence boost tool that we can all use?
Oh, absolutely. It's more than just that. It sets you up for the success. It's not, we often say it's not about me, the speaker. It's about the audience and what the audience needs. And if we're setting the audience up for success, then we will be successful.
What are some other areas of lack of confidence that comes into this world of public speaking?
Oh, I first and foremost, it's being prepared. If you're not prepared, you know that deep down inside your soul. And as you go up there, then you're lacking more confidence. And we often hear about how much we practice. I never practice at all a word for word speech.
Wow.
Now, what I do is I practice the stories I'm going to capture within that speech. Okay. And I've gotten it down to where I can tell a story in 2 minutes, in 5 minutes, or 10 minutes worth of time, because you never know what's going to happen to you before you walk on stage. And we've all had that happen.
Yes.
I remember one time I was told I had an hour to speak. Great. So I prepared for an hour. And then backstage, about 15 minutes before, I was told, hey, we're really running way late. You've got about 40 minutes. Great. And then I was told, you got 30 minutes. And then as I walked on stage, it was a female CEO, and she greeted me and then acted like she was kissing me and said, you have 20 minutes. And I'm on stage. So if I hadn't been prepared to take what was a 10-minute story and translate that down to a 2-minute story, I would have been talking real fast and would have been trying to get through all my material because I had memorized it and everything else. And that would have been a disaster for both the audience, the client, and then ultimately for me.
Well, and that's a great point, because I also coach people on the fact that you should have your long story, your medium-sized story, and your baby story. And it's for that very reason. You can have the confidence to know I can pull this out on the fly, and it doesn't affect the overall canon of what you're going to do. And I hear so many speakers, they don't have that. They don't know how to immediately cut it down like you just said. And it does happen a lot.
Well, the other thing that happens is, at least for me, is you got to get a real sense of where the audience is. And if you're telling a story and you realize that you're losing the audience, how do you condense that story to make the point, move on, to try to keep the audience with you? So yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to practice. I mean, I take my speeches and kind of divide them into vignettes.
Okay.
little acts within the play, if you will. And so because of that, I know the length of each of those vignettes normally. And I
Well,
know
and
where I can cut them down if I have to, or expand it if it's really the point that's hitting the audience.
and that's where part of the confidence you have to know how to read the audience, adapt to the audience, and you also sometimes just have to let it be and just plow through. Because there's time when I thought there was a joke, there was a response I would have gotten. The feedback comes back instead of you really got me thinking, and I just want to absorb it. So sometimes the crowd is absorbing it, but the reaction is not what you thought it was going to be. That's another one of those confidence builders. It took me a while to figure out is they don't always really react the way that I want them to.
I remember being with a well-known comedian who shall remain nameless here, and I thought he killed it on stage. And I was backstage with him, and he walked out and he said, "Oh my God, I worked so hard."
Yes.
And I said, "You worked so hard, they loved it." And he said, "But I didn't have them at this point, and then I did this." So also knowing what you can do and figure out what you can do. In some of my signature stories, I know exactly how the audience is going to react. And if they're not reacting that way, I have to take them there. I have to push them a little bit further, and they will react to it. But sometimes they need to be pushed as well.
When it comes to lack of confidence, some people try to fake it to make it. I'm not a big advocate of that when you're on the stage because you have to be authentic and people can smell it, they can see it, they can taste it in the air that this guy's full of it. Basically, what it boils down to. What would you say to that confidence issue that they're just faking it?
Well, they shouldn't. I mean, that's what I would say. Uh, you know, I think great speakers are very authentic with who they are. They're comfortable in their own skin. Uh, we joke. I'm kind of known as the big guy with the bow tie. Uh, when I started wearing the bow ties, I noticed a change in the audience before I even got on stage. I speak on advocacy, government affairs, public policy. And when they see a guy speaking on that subject that has a bow tie on, they think they're either a professor or they're an attorney. And I'm neither. But they gain confidence in me because of that. And I gain confidence because of that, because I know how they're going to react to that. Um, so I'm authentic with it. I love to wear bow ties. I feel comfortable in them. The joke is I'm 6'8", and the
Yeah.
joke is that the reason why I have to wear a bow tie is because the ties were never long enough for me anyhow. And so this is really a regular tie. I just make it
But
into.
that is part of the confidence building. You do have to be authentic. You have to know who you are and just stay centered in that. That is a great confidence builder for everyone to know who you are.
And one of the other things, I was a pretty good athlete as a young man, and I played baseball. And the more important the game, the more right before the game, I would break out in a sweat. And it never bothered me with sports. And I had been speaking probably about 15 years and paid, but it wasn't my full-time gig. And when I made it my full-time gig, all of a sudden I started sweating again.
Yes.
Because it was more important now. It was kind of do or die for me. And as soon as I equated the fact that the more important something was, me sweating, then I started to calm down a little bit because that was exactly where I should be. I'm getting ready for it. I'm jacked up for it. I'm excited about it. And I actually use that as a confidence builder that tells me this is going to be good. This is going to be important. I'm ready to go now. And all of a sudden it stopped happening because I addressed it and understood it. So anybody that has anything that happens to them, they get a nervous titch, they start coughing, whatever happens because they're nervous about that, recognize what that nerve is and use it to your advantage. That tells you that, hey, this is going to be important. This is going to be good.
That's probably a great way to wrap up this entire week of Freedom from Fear of Public Speaking, because the butterflies, to me, do the very same thing. And I've told people, if I ever lose the butterflies completely, I need to step off stage.
Yeah.
There is something about checking yourself, saying, what I'm going to share is important. It's of value. There is a vulnerable part to my story when I share it. If I don't have a little bit of that awkwardness and that butterflies, I probably know I'm not really into this today. So it really is. It's not lack of confidence butterflies. It's actually a butterfly that's saying, you're ready to go and you're going to take it serious.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Never take the audience for granted.
Roger, you've also got yourself a great podcast. We do want to highlight this and say thank you for being on today. Tell us a little bit about this podcast and what they can find there.
Well, the podcast is dedicated to the art of advocacy, and I talk to the people that actually promote advocacy within the organizations that they work in. I just did an interview yesterday with the Wounded Warrior Project and talking about how they advocate on behalf of the honorable men and service women that have served our country to protect our freedoms. It's wide range of different type of people, but all doing the same thing, speaking out for the causes that matter the most to them and taking care of their stakeholders.
Roger Rickard, again, everybody, hit that QR code, scan that, go check out the podcast, add it to your playlist. There's always great stuff there that Roger is putting forward. Again, he is the founder and the president of Voices in Advocacy, author, speaker, great guy all the way around. And remember the bow tie, because you will never, ever forget Roger. Roger, thanks for being a part of our week-long series on overcoming the fear of public speaking. I love what you shared today. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Trigger, thanks for having me on this Saturday.
So that's our special edition on this Saturday. And by the way, don't worry, we're not done. Remember, July is the entire month is freedom from the fear of public speaking. We are going to continue having more guests at 2 p.m. live on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the remainder of the month of July. So make sure you follow us, find us, always join us. We're streaming on multiple channels every day. And of course, we would love to have your comments, questions. Beam them in early throughout the rest of July. We will take your questions and add them in. Or of course, you can always drop in the chat and join the conversation. That's going to do it for today in our special edition of 2 p.m. with The Trigger. Enjoy your rest of the weekend, and we'll see you next Monday with more 2 p.m. live.